We are
Did
live.
you post the oh, I see.
I got it going live on our Twitter feed instead of the YouTube channel because I don't particularly care if it goes. People are watching via YouTube or Twitter. I don't get paid to YouTube.
Are we on?
We are. We're live. Yes.
Okay.
What?
Sorry. I'm going to tweet it out and then we can get going.
Okay. Yeah, I'm throwing it to the board real quick. Here's the YouTube link. You need it.
Gosh, this is like the thing from Star Wars, isn't it?
What?
Isn't this the thing from Star Wars? The little like.
Yeah. They ate one. Chewie ate one. No, man, we're all business today.
I was going to do Tyree East.
I get it. I mean, you should have done Tyree East, North, South, and West. That would have been good. It's a porg. It's a porg, Zach.
Yeah, porg.
All right. Chris, did you miss me?
Nope.
I was very helpful yesterday. Filling in for young Zachary.
You really nailed the Whataburger.
I did. Order was flawless. And, well, I didn't, yeah. Alrighty.
Did you watch Succession last night?
I haven't watched Succession at all. It's on my list of things to watch.
Okay.
My wife doesn't seem super interested, so don't say anything.
Don't tell me. Somebody told me to spark it up. Guys, give me a minute. Somebody in the comment section said to spark it up. I'll be back.
Are you really going to go spark? Yeah, I don't care. I mean, you do what you got to do at this point.
Just let me crank up the spaces and let's go.
Uh-oh.
Is that really him?
Trident Null in the house. Yeah, no spoilers, Berg. Succession.
I didn't watch it.
Okay.
I don't want any spoilers.
The comment section's going to spoil it.
Yeah, someone's going to spoil it in the comments section.
I can't stay awake to watch Succession on Sunday nights because it starts at 9 p.m., so I always watch it on Mondays.
Because you're old. Yeah. Yeah, we got it.
My sources had to break through my do not disturb last night because I put the do not disturb goes on my phone at 9:40 every school night.
That means they have to double call you, right?
So they have to double call me to get through. And I had to get a double call to get the scoop last night because I was done.
Got the Pappy raffle. That's right, J-Rod. Big man, big heart. Bourbon on a budget. On the bench. It'll be somewhere in January. Damn. People don't like Bud in the comment section. Luis Rossberg. If we lose Coleman, Chris Nee will be my favorite. I don't think that's Josh's fault, but I'm here for Chris being someone's favorite. He's taken some
He's taken some lumps in the last
Yeah, he really has. It's kind of fun.
Just for no reason.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep the board going in a singular direction. I step away from the board for 3 hours and it just turns into chaos.
I was pinning people's scolding message board post. It was chaos. Who took it down? Was it you, Chris? You let it stay up for a few hours, though. Blink twice if Coleman starts. All right, let's get going. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've got 100 people in here watching. I'm sure it'll crank up here on this Monday afternoon. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to On the Bench. I am your host for this episode, Brendan Sonnone, joined by a full bench, Josh Newberg. Hello, Joshua.
Hello.
Chris Nee, good to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yep, hours.
Yeah, it has been. And Zachary's not from a dungeon today. Zach Blostein, welcome to Not in a Dungeon.
Hello.
Hi. Where are you right now, Zach?
I'm back at home, but my room is no longer my room. So this is like my sister's room, but she's not here. So it's like, yeah.
So why is your room no longer your room, but your sister's room is?
Because my other sister is staying in there now.
Did you get a cat? Did you get the cat?
Is that a
I'm-
confidence meter from your parents of you're going to turn out to be something, but they're a little concerned about your sister who's not still living there?
I don't know. She'll take this room over when she comes down. It's just she works like a job where she can't really like travel a lot. So, but yeah. Wait, what did you ask, Brendan?
I don't remember. That was a long time ago. There's a lot going on. My brain is more scattered than normal. Oh, the cat. Did you get the cat?
Oh, I'm getting it on the way up to Tallahassee. We just stopped
Okay.
by to see it.
Okay. So you're committing to the cat.
Yeah.
Okay, it just has to sign. It's got to
Just
sign a
please
paper that says
respect
committed.
my decision.
Okay. Decision respected. All right. So there's not much going on today or this week. So I'm glad we've spent 2 or 3 minutes talking about cats and Zach's power rankings and his parents' affection. Let's get to it. We're going to go do a early signing period preview kind of while recapping the official visits. There's a ton to get to. An athletic director was hired as well since the last time we did on the bench. But let's get to, I think, what's going to be at the top of a lot of people's minds right now. And those are, they're not even rumors at this point. They're reports that Kenny Dillingham has been offered the offensive coordinator job at Oregon. Dan Lanning, obviously from Georgia, who's worked with Kenny and under Mike Norvell at various places before, got the job at Oregon as the head coach. So, Joshua, you been taking calls. You've been checking with sources. You've been doing a lot in the last 12. You've been doing a lot recently anyways, but it's been heated up a little bit in the last 12 hours or so. So tell the listeners at home what you're hearing currently, what the latest is with the Oregon pursuit of Kenny.
Absolutely, Brendan.
Thank you.
Yesterday at around 3 or 4 p.m., Bruce Feldman reported that there was interest on Oregon's end in Kenny Dillingham to become their next OC under Dan Lanning. Feldman was careful with his words, did not say that there was an offer, did not say that he was the expected hire. Normally, Feldman is very pointed in the direction that things are headed, but this was more just that there is interest. So, of course, I had no reason to doubt what he was reporting, and I'd been looking into this for several weeks just in case Dan Lanning got a big-time job, because I do believe Dillingham and Lanning have a strong relationship, and we've talked about it on OTB prior to this, that Lanning was at Dillingham's funeral. Wedding. Sorry, Kenny. I killed Kenny.
Oh my God, you bastard!
Lanning was at Dillingham's wedding a few years ago, and the two are definitely close. Since then, I have been able to confirm, and I don't know if this was reported nationally yet or not, but Dillingham has
Wait,
been...
I'm sorry, Josh. We have to stop. You called a wedding a funeral. I feel like that has to be discussed. That's the person who bastard. Is that a little like Freudian slip? What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not ready to put him in the dirt yet. I'm sorry. But I was able to confirm that Oregon has indeed offered. As of last night, there was no decision. I can tell you that I expect this to be finalized sometime today, one way or another. I don't know which way it's going to head. Dillingham has a tough decision ahead of him to make. I think it could go either way at this point. Do we want to kind of weigh the options of what he's looking at and why Oregon could be a viable option for him?
Let's do the pros and cons. Like, let's talk about someone else's job, yes, and why they would leave potentially. I think that actually is going to be a good exercise because people are wondering why. So why would he go to Oregon? What would be appealing about that job?
Well, I'll make the pro case for him going to Oregon.
Okay.
10 years ago, James Coley taught me something very important in coaching searches. He told me that in order to figure out where a coach is going to go, you have to know what his ultimate goal is. And knowing Kenny, we all know that he's a young up-and-comer that wants to be a head coach one day. Having been in this business for a while, I kind of understand the corporate ladder of NCAA football and how it works. And I think if Kenny ultimately wants to be a head coach, this is a step that he probably needs to take to go to Oregon, to come out from underneath Mike Norvell and own his own offense. Dan Lanning is a defensive-minded coach. This is going to be 100% Kenny Dillingham's offense, his side of the ball. He's going to get to make the hires, I'm told. They're going to commit, I believe, somewhere in the range of a 3-year deal worth about $1 million per year. That's a significant pay raise from what Dillingham makes now. But more importantly than the money, I think it just comes down to the responsibility and the next viable step for him from that spot that he's at in Oregon, if he's successful, will be a head coaching job. So I can understand why it's more than just the money, which the money is significant. But I do think there's just more in play than the money.
I would add to that, and those are all great points. I think those are the main points, Josh. I think a little bit more subsidiary points for Kenny and the pro for Oregon. One, going out west and kind of getting his recruiting ties to out west. We've seen that already come into play in his time at Florida State. He does a really good job recruiting nationally, but he's an Arizona guy. So he would have more natural recruiting ties at Oregon. And for someone who's ambitious and wants to be a head coach eventually, being in the Pac-12 probably makes sense if that's where, like, you go to Oregon, a school that is well set up for success in a couple of years. Arizona State opens up, Washington State opens up, whatever. For someone who's ambitious and wants to be head coach, being out that way and familiar
Your names
with
in those circles.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's one that where it makes sense for him. The other is you kind of reset the clock a little bit too. I think I've been probably one of the biggest supporters of Kenny Dillingham in his offensive strategy the last 2 seasons, the development of Jordan Travis. Like, it's well documented how I feel about the job he's done. But you're 2 years into this thing and FSU hasn't had a winning record yet. You get to go to Oregon with a new contract and a fresh, clean slate. Like, that could be appealing as well. So I think those are other things as well. So with that in mind, why, guys, would he stay at Florida State? What are the appeal that if Florida State comes with a contract extension and a little bit of a raise, like, why else would he stay?
His relationship with Mike Norvell. If he didn't have that right now, this thing would be done. There wouldn't be an overnight, let me sleep on it type reaction from Dillingham. I think he'd be gone. I think the relationship that he has with Mike Norvell has caused him pause. The feeling that he wants to help Mike Norvell sign this recruiting class that he recruited to Florida State is a reason that this is going to be a hard decision for Dillingham to make. But ultimately, as a young up and coming coach, this is what you coach for. This is what you work so hard for, is to become an OC in your own, that's under your own room. And, I think ultimately Dillingham accepts the job at Oregon, but that's not done yet.
Only other thing I would add to what Josh has said is he has a relationship with a lot of players here, time invested. That's always a tough thing to sever and walk away from. And you don't completely walk away from it, but you know what I mean? And the other thing I would throw out there is you also don't want to become known as a coach that just is always bouncing. And I don't think Kenny's viewed that way. But if you do it too often, if it starts happening year after year, you're kind of viewed as a journeyman, type of deal. I don't think that's something Kenny has to worry about in this predicament. But in coaching changes, that's always something that comes up.
Yeah, I think the best chance for Kenny to get a job this offseason was for Dan Lanning to get a head coaching job. And with Lanning getting a head coaching job on the West Coast, it almost makes too much sense, because there was some thought that maybe he was going to stay in the Southeast, with all those jobs opening. But with Lanning going to Oregon on the West Coast, like there's a lot of box checking going on for Dillingham. Right, Chris?
Thanks, buddy.
Richie Price comments, upside is higher at FSU than Oregon. I mean, yeah, long term, yes. But again, Kenny Dillingham's an offensive coordinator who wants to be a head coach somewhere one day. Who has the more upside in a 3-year window?
This is real.
Oregon.
College football's very, very corporate in terms of you have to hit certain stairs before you get to the top. Like, there's
what
no
does your resume say about you?
Right.
What schools are on your resume?
Even though it's football, it follows a very corporate structure. Like, you don't get a head coaching job if you've never called plays. There's just things that you have to do before you become a head coach. And if Dillingham wants to be a head coach, and we all know that he has a sense of urgency to become one, this is an opportunity that I expect him to take. It's not about FSU. It's not to be spiteful. It's not to leave anybody in a bad situation. I think this is a very hard decision for him, only from a personal level. But if you just take out the personal stuff, I think the decision would have already been made by now.
And just to add tail end note, Kenny Dillingham was around FSU all day yesterday, working with the officials. He was on campus. It was business as usual for him as far as working with FSU on Sunday.
Christopher, if let's play hypothetical for a couple things. I know I'm going to the right person who loves playing hypotheticals, but we'll do it anyways. If Kenny were to depart from FSU today or after signing day, and that would be a pretty big difference between those two time periods, whether it's 24 hours from now or 36, 48 hours from now, what would the potential recruiting impact and fallout be from Florida State's perspective?
Well, you'd have to see what AJ Duffy thinks, but there's other relationships here. Ryan Bartow being one of the main ones I would point out that are developed there. I think Mike Norvell has also done a good job with the quarterback of developing a relationship with him. I think it would sever things pretty well with Javonte Barnes. I think the main reason FSU's in play for Javonte Barnes is Kenny Dillingham. I don't really think there's a second connect there. Kevin Coleman's an Owen who I think it could impact, but I'm not sure it would wipe it out as much as I feel it would with Javonte Barnes. Micah Pittman's an Owen where the relationship is almost wholeheartedly, it seems, with Kenny Dillingham. So those are four that immediately come to mind. I don't think it will have a broad impact if it were to happen in the sense of wreaking havoc on the class. But obviously that's stuff you need to look at. And the quarterback is where everybody's going to start the conversation at.
Yeah, I just don't see like where AJ Duffy would go. He hasn't entertained any other teams. He hasn't taken any other official visits, and we're less than 72 hours from him putting pen to paper. I think this is a done deal. I also know that one of the recruiting pitches to some of these quarterbacks from Dillingham is just the truth. And I know that he's told quarterbacks the truth in that he's probably not going to be here for another 3 years. And when he says that to recruits, he means it on either side of the spectrum. Like either, they're not going to do well and the staff's going to be fired because how many, up and coming OCs stay around for 6 or 7 years. And then the other thing is if they do well, he's already told guys like, hey, if we do really well and we win, I'm going to get another job elsewhere. So if you want to come to Florida State, you better like the head coach here. I think that has been instilled in a lot of the recruits throughout the process. And I would be shocked if anything happened with AJ Duffy. And he's one of the most important recruits on the board right now. And one of the recruits that Kenny Dillingham spent the most time with.
Oregon wouldn't be a potential, like that wouldn't be a link. That's the only place that I would think of that would make sense this late in the game. If that,
I don't think Dillingham would do that to FSU.
Yeah, I don't.
Go ahead, Zach.
I think he's trying to leave. Like if Dillingham leaves, he's trying to leave on a good note, especially since he's so close with Norvell and a lot of those staffers. Yeah, I don't think he'd try to snag away the quarterback.
Yeah,
dude, there's no way he would do that.
Yeah.
All right, Zach Blossing's on record reporting right now. No, that makes sense. Because Kenny does have a ton of respect for Mike Norvell. Only other thing I would add real quick, you guys know about the recruiting more in depth than I do, but Mike Norvell does have his hand in the cookie jar for a lot of recruitments. I don't think this would be like a Sam Howell, UNC type of deal with Walt Bell leaving, and that just completely fractures the relationship. Mike Norvell does a really good job recruiting, priority, high-end targets, and developing a relationship with guys. And I'd imagine the quarterback would be one that he would have a decent connection to. So I'm not super worried about that one if it does materialize. The only other thing I want to get to here in the hypotheticals for Kenny Dillingham, if he were to leave for the OC job at Oregon, and it's obviously very early on. This hasn't even happened up to this point. We don't know if it will happen, but if it does, I guess what are the dominoes that we could see for the rest of FSU staff? People want to speculate on replacements and whatnot, but what scenarios would we see as far as like the dominoes falling? Josh, I'll throw those to you.
I don't ever get to break out my whiteboard anymore, do I?
No, not since Willie Taggart was the hot board.
We didn't have a linebacker hot board, and it looks like we're not going to have an OC hot board either, unfortunately, because I expect Kenny Dillingham, if Kenny Dillingham departs, I think that the most likely outcome is FSU promotes Alex Atkins to OC and goes out and hires a QB coach. So you would have Alex Atkins remain as Florida State's O-line coach and take over offensive coordinator duties. And then FSU would likely promote Tony Tokars as the new QB coach. That is a couple steps further. And it gets a little murky when we talk about who's going to be the QB coach, because I also believe that if Kenny Dillingham goes to Oregon, there's a good chance that he tries to bring in Tokars as well with him to Oregon. So we could see a little bit of a bidding war there and see how that shakes out. So I'm more confident in saying that the initial move of Alex Atkins to OC will go off as I predict. And then the QB, I think it's going to be Tony, but there's some wiggle room there to see what happens. And this is all pending Dillingham's departure.
Anything to add to that, Chris?
Nope. Josh
Okay.
nailed it.
Usually when you unmute yourself, I think that you're going to say something. But that was the cue there. Hey, the one thing with Atkins, if he were, and I think when his name was first brought up on the message board yesterday as this potentially being a domino in Atkins moving up to offensive coordinator, a few people were like, well, why would he be the coordinator? He does have coordinating experience when he was at Charlotte and has been super heavily involved in the run game here at Florida State and scheming that up. The only downside that I could see or that would need to be worked out, he is so valuable on the field during games, coaching the offensive line. And Kenny coaches as the eye in the sky. And that's a dynamic I think Mike Norvell really likes, to have someone looking at what's happening a few plays ahead, telling him what to expect, what to anticipate, and what to call, if this is what teams are anticipating to do. So would you move Alex Atkins up into the skybox, or would you keep him on the field? And in that case, is he really coordinated? There's just different things I think I would need answered before I'm fully on board with that.
The O-line coach needs to be on the sideline with the O-line.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that's always true.
Also
universally.
depends on how much Atkins trusts his GAs and the people on the sideline as well. But I tend to agree with you. I'm just throwing that out there. That's a possibility. But that'll be something that we'll look into further. I'm not ruling out a national search, but I highly doubt we see a national search. And if we did see a national search for an OC, I think Alex Atkins would start looking elsewhere. Understandably so.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the next step for him. He's one of the top offensive line coaches in the country. Like, what else is there for him other than...
Just as we talked about Kenny Dillingham's ascension to become a head coach, I know Alex Atkins has those same hopes and dreams down the road at some point as well. So that's why, I think Norvell highly values Alex Atkins, which is why I think he gets the OC title if and when this all goes down.
These are good problems to have ultimately
as a program. Also changes a lot of dynamics in recruiting.
How so?
Can we dive into this about just the way
because Kenny's a really good recruiter for the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I consider Kenny a shark in the same way that Tim Brewster was kind of a shark for FSU in those times. I think that Alex Atkins is a very good recruiter. Very good. But he spent most of his time recruiting his position, which is vitally important to the team, and they recruit so many. But Kenny had a different dynamic on the staff. He was kind of that utility hitter. He recruited everybody. He recruited everybody on offense. Even he was the primary on some guys like a Javonte Barnes, where he should have never been the primary. That should be the running back coach is the one recruiting him. But for whatever reason, Kenny was the only one recruiting Javonte Barnes. There's some recruitments that were like that. He was also the right-hand man to Mike Norvell when it came to taking and recruiting quarterback transfers. So I wonder now who's going to be that decision maker along with Mike Norvell. Is it going to be Alex Atkins? Is it going to be somebody else? Who's going to be the one that makes that first contact with a wide receiver transfer or a five-star tight end or whatever it is, just a different position other than the one that they coach. The departure of Kenny will cause FSU to kind of have to reshuffle the deck in terms of who does what on staff and who fills what role. I think those are kind of the biggest question marks I have is you have two elite recruiters on your offensive staff. You have Kenny Dillingham and you have Alex Atkins. After that, it's a far drop off on offense when it comes to recruiting. You lose Kenny, even if you promote Tony, who is, from all accounts that we hear, a great recruiter, an up-and-comer, promising coach on the next level. He's not going to have the same ability of Kenny Dillingham, the same confidence to go out and just jump in any recruitment. This is the first time he would be a P5 coach recruiting against Alabama and Ohio State, Miami, and Florida. It's going to take him a little time to get his feet wet. So I think if Dillingham departs, I think that they need more shakeup on the offensive staff to bring on some better recruiters, because I don't think you can really replace Kenny Dillingham's role with just one coach.
And I think in general, like this might be a positive. It could be viewed as a positive step that FSU would be kind of forced to take to do a full evaluation of the offensive staff and how it's recruiting right now. Is Ron Dugan's getting it done on the recruiting trail right now? I mean, we'll see what happens to Kevin Coleman, but his position hasn't been recruited at a very high level the last couple of years. David Johnson, Yak was brought in to be an elite recruiter. My opinion, I don't think we've seen those results to date. Chris Thompson hasn't really been a dog on the recruiting trail, and some of his experience and connections haven't paid off the way I was hoping that it would. So I think, if Kenny were to leave and there was a potential for change up at other spots, and there was, again, domino effects and trickle down effect for Kenny leaving, I think it would, optimistically, I would like for Norvell to do a full evaluation of the offensive side of the ball to see if he can beef up the recruiting there across the board, if that staff that he currently has would be able to compensate without Kenny being there. So I don't think they could.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like replacing Jermaine Johnson. Like, what are the odds that Florida State's going to go out and get another Jermaine Johnson? I think they're going to kind of have to rework the D-line. Now, they can get a D-line that's just as productive, for sure, but they're going to have to rework it. Like, you're not just going to fill at that position. I kind of feel like that's how it is with Kenny.
Josh is going Moneyball on us. We don't have one guy who can hit 40 home runs, but if we get three guys that combine to hit 40 home runs in that spot, hey.
Just because of the relationship with him and Norvell. Like, you're not going to replace that. Norvell trusted him to go out. There was certain recruitments that Kenny could just start up. Like, he didn't have to check with Norvell to ask because they knew they were on the same page. There's just some trust there that's going to have to be rebuilt.
That is a good point that Michael made.
I'm told there was
popped on the screen.
Okay.
Go ahead, Josh.
I've been texting, and there is there's rumors out on Twitter that there was a 10 a.m. team meeting or something. I just confirmed with somebody in the Moore Center that there is no 10 a.m. meeting because it's now 10:30. And
they would not have a team meeting for the offensive coordinator leaving, guys. Like, chill. That's not how that's going to work.
So
someone said
I just wanted
Thompson,
to check.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Josh. Someone said Thompson could also help coach O-line during games if they were to put Alex up in the box in that scenario. That is a good point. That is an area he has a great deal of experience. And truthfully, they probably could put Chris Thompson up there. Chris Thompson's done a bit of everything in his career. I think he's a guy that would be highly trusted by Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell. And to Josh's point about Mike Norvell and Kenny Dillingham recruiting in sync, yeah, it is important because Kenny's messaging is echoed by Norvell and vice versa. And it's just one of those things because they've been around each other for so long. They think so much alike. And that's something you just don't easily replace.
I'm just going to address this because it's been asked on the message board a lot. Michael Cecil asks, would we move on from Ron Dugans, especially if we missed on Mortimer and Coleman? I mean, if they miss on Mortimer, Coleman might be a long shot at this point. Yeah, if you go through the early signing period over at wide receiver, that would force you to take a really close look at wide receiver recruiting. And
they could miss on Coleman if Dillingham stays. Like,
yeah. I don't think it's Coleman is the. I'm saying if you come out empty-handed without Mortimer, someone who's been a long time commit, yeah, that would be problematic.
Especially with what we've seen from the wide receiver room, developmentally wise, and just I think there'll be some revisiting after signing day.
Yeah, and to our knowledge, right now Ron Dugan's contract expires in January. We haven't been informed of an extension. We asked within a couple weeks ago, and late January is when that is.
This is the window that those things get done. Like now till like sometime before the next signing period. If you were going to make a extension.
Sometimes at FSU they get done before and we just don't get told about them. Sadly, that's the way it works around here sometimes.
But we have asked for our part. We have asked within the last couple of weeks, so hopefully that is sufficient. Okay. Let's go to recruiting. There's a ton to get to. I want to use this as a time to talk about the official visit weekend and then kind of pivot to what we're expecting on early signing period, which starts on Wednesday and goes through Friday, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. But most of the action, I think.
Caveat on that, transfers and those types, they can obviously sign or enroll after that date if they so choose. You're also going to have kids that sign in that date, do not announce and do like the Army Bowl or All-American Bowl, which is now called the Under Armour All-American game, and announce at those and then enroll. So there's a little bit of a slide there. But for the most part, most kids announce Wednesday, sign Wednesday, some trickle down Thursday, Friday. and then the exceptions that we mentioned.
Okay, let's get started with an FSU had a smattering of guys here who are official visiting, a couple high-end uncommitted prospects, one committed guy, a Juco, two transfer types. Let's start with the Juco prospects, safety Marquise Gilbert. Some of the FSU's been in on for a little while now. Zach, you caught up with him yesterday after the official visit. Can you kind of give us the timeline of when he was here and just the takeaways from talking to Gilbert?
Yeah, so he got in Thursday night, I believe, and he left Saturday night at like 10 p.m. I was told that was the plan all along. I think there were, people were assuming that he like left early or something because he didn't stay into Sunday. I think he could have extended his visit a little bit more, but it was basically a full 2-day visit. And with Gilbert, I think Florida State did a great job on this trip. I don't know how much of a priority they made him, just because if you look at the safety board, you've already got Sam McCall committed, who you're projecting as a safety. And then Azariah Thomas was also on campus, who I think probably plays safety if he's a defensive back. And then with Marquise Gilbert, he's the number one Juco safety in the country. But I think Auburn has made him more of a priority, to my knowledge, and I think they still feel confident. He's supposed to announce his commitment tonight at 7 p.m. on his Twitter and Instagram. So we'll see tonight where he's headed, but I don't get the sense that FSU is super confident that they're going to land him.
We don't have a pre-write right now, just to peek behind the curtain. We haven't done any scouting reports. So, yeah, it's right now someone that we're not anticipating FSU to land, but I'm not even sure how much FSU needs him at this point if they end up getting the next guy on this list. Let's go around the horn here. Chris should know how to pronounce the name by now, but we figured out the correct pronunciation. I'm confident in it now, but I want to see how you guys pronounce it. Zach, you just mentioned it, the safety from Niceville. How do you say his first name?
Azariah.
Okay. All right. Josh, how would you say it?
Azariah.
Okay.
It's like
Chris?
a yeah at the
Azariah.
end instead of yeah.
It's sort of though, kind of like Wanye, his brother. They're similar, but Azariah.
I think you're all right. I think it's Azariah. I think it's a yay at the end.
Yeah, I think so.
Azariah. It's tough at the very end. I'm still struggling with it. Azariah.
I'll save
days
Stone
ago.
from himself and talk about his visit. So the Niceville safety came
Thank
in,
you.
or I'll call him a safety, but he's an athlete. He could actually play on either side of ball. He did talk to Ron Dugans as well as the FSU defensive coaches. I wholeheartedly expect him to play in the secondary. I think safety is a more likely position than corner, but he could play at both. He came in with his mother, Stephanie. They had a very good time. I believe one of his brothers is Zende Ray, who was running back at Georgia Tech previously at FAMU before that. I believe he also came in for a portion of the visit. I heard that, he kind of told his brother that, it's a good play. He's kind of gave him a green stamp. Going into the visit, LSU, Oklahoma, Florida had all been heavily involved. Georgia Tech's thrown in there, but I think that's essentially the family giving them a nod for Wanye's time up there. I don't think Georgia Tech's a contender. I wholeheartedly expect it to be FSU on Wednesday. It would be kind of surprising at this point if it is not, because of the changes at the others. And UF, even though Corey Raymond, who he had a relationship with LSU, went to Gainesville, I don't think that's going to change the dynamic with where Florida stands with him at this time.
The big takeaway I got from his interview, it seems, do we all have FSU crystal balls in at this point? Yes,
I do.
I do not.
Oh, Josh,
Get on it,
Show
Nimber.
pick.
This is a show pick, but then
Yes!
Wilt Fong also put his in today, I believe. He
I
definitely
have
wrote
been
about it
waiting
today.
for this
Put it in
moment.
today.
wow, guys,
Another
do you know
show
who put?
pick. Probably the last show pick of 2022 recruiting cycle for me.
Wow.
He's announcing Wednesday at 1 p.m. at a ceremony at Niceville, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central Time. Their Central Time Zone school.
Oops, I almost put in Oklahoma. You think people would freak out if
Oklahoma.
I accidentally
Freaked
did
out.
that?
Who was
So,
the first
Simone, what
person
were you
to
going
put
to
in
say
a
about your
crystal-
takeaway from the talk with him?
I was going to talk about my crystal ball and how it's the first one for him, but we can move on. No need to really belabor that point.
Why don't we talk
I-
about your crystal ball and Jaden Gibson and being the first one there?
It's at Oklahoma right now. Oklahoma is the place to be. No, it's Green Acres. Oh, I thought the takeaways. One, I thought the fact they put him with Jarquez McClellan was a really good idea. That was the host on the official visit. I thought that was really smart. You talked to both those guys, both very cerebral, kind of introverted, but not shy, just very thoughtful. And you're talking about two guys who are going to play defensive back, and even Azarea said that himself, like that was smart of FSU to do. The biggest takeaway, though, was, and this was something that I think a reason why Florida State was really struggling to get traction until recently, and why them working so hard to continue to pour effort and time into that relationship is paid off. Will hopefully likely be a commitment. When he came to Florida State a couple of years ago to check out the campus, didn't really like the vibe he got, didn't like the vibe from the coaching staff, talked about not being very upbeat, not having this sense of optimism. Mike Norvell's energy apparently was just something that he was blown away by. The way the entire coaching staff interacted with each other, something that really impressed him. He left that interview or that official visit and ended the interview, in my mind, felt like someone who was comfortable, ready to make a decision. And I believe that decision will be Florida State.
Yeah, his previous visit was during his sophomore year, so the last staff.
Yep, the last staff. It was a previous staff. So let's go to defensive tackle, Daniel Lyons, FSU commitment, pretty long-term commitment at this point. Chris, I'll let you talk about his exit interview, and just, it was only a couple minutes long, but what'd you take away from that?
He's very firmly committed. He's looking forward to signing. He's looking forward to enrolling, and he's ready to get to work with Odell Higgins, who he holds in very, very high regard. Said he'll be here. I believe it was January 4th, his first workout. I want to say it was January 10th or the 11th. He's looking forward to it. He's about 275 pounds right now. He wants to get up closer to around 300 by the time he's hitting the field next season. Yeah, he came with a boatload of family. They have come, some of them, I don't think his uncle who came this time was with him previously, but most of the people that came with him this time had been here on previous visits, including the one where he committed. He's all in.
It was really cool too. Like, I think it was his grandpa that needed help getting around a little bit, needed a wheelchair. So. And Daniel takes out the wheelchair out of the car, sets it up for him to help out, and then Odell helps with grandpa too. But like, that was just a cool thing to see a 18-year-old that could be running over to go hug the coaches and stuff. Instead, he's making sure grandpa's taken care of, and that was a cool little detail that I took away from that visit. Let's talk a little bit about one other big time prospect. This is offensive tackle Julian Armella. Chris, you talked to him as well. And if Josh or Zach, do you want to add into this, feel free. But Chris, the takeaway from Julian Armella and the forced offensive tackle's visit to Florida State.
The takeaway is that I'd be really surprised after that exit interview if it's not Florida State. I mean, hell, he was talking like he was committed to some degree. This visit was about getting mom on campus and getting her to rubber stamp it in and say that she liked it. It was her first time. He said that, I forget the exact quote, but I think like shockingly, or it shocked her how much she liked it, essentially. He really enjoyed himself. He likes Alex Atkins a ton. He thinks very highly of Alex Atkins' coaching ability and what he's capable of doing with offensive linemen and the way he approaches that group. He talked about how dreadful that group was a couple years ago and the progress they have made under the tutelage of Alex Atkins. He talked about Mike Norvell, the energy, loved going over to his house. The Flaming Spirit house was a big hit with him. Said that was crazy. He's a young man that, LSU had led a lot of this recruitment, but the changes in Baton Rouge very much left the door wide open. And FSU has done a very, very good job since June of chipping away, working really hard here. And I think in the end, it's them, and they've earned the right to be the team that lands his commitment. This isn't one that I feel like is falling in their lap. I feel like they've done a great job of making a great deal of effort over the last 6 months. And it's going to show on Wednesday or whenever he officially announces in the coming days. We're waiting on a ceremony time and whatnot from him.
Yeah, I feel real good about my crystal ball pick for Armella coming out of the weekend. Just talked to a couple sources last night, backs up everything Chris says. I would be very shocked if he did not sign with FSU. This thing's come full circle. Great job by Alex Atkins and the staff for just remaining on him. And like Chris said, just kind of chipping away because they were not always in this position. There's other teams that were a bigger threat than FSU to land them. But in the end, these last 3-4 weeks, I'd say it's been FSU's to lose. And I think that they get it done on Wednesday.
If time allows today, I'm going to write a little something up on his body transformation. Because I was thinking back to the first time I met him, 12, 18 months ago, and he was a 330-pound heavier kid. And today he is really unbelievably in great shape. And it's just kind of amazing to look. Every time he gets out of a car at FSU, he looks a little bit better than he did the last time. And I think it speaks a lot to the work ethic he's put in. He talked a lot about why it was so important for him to drop that weight, prepare himself for the next level, to understand as a high school offensive lineman, it's not a necessity to be the 330-pound, big body, heavy kid. It's more about having a great frame and a work ethic to go into a college program and do what they ask to become the player you want to become.
Yeah, he looked like $1 million to Chris's point. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about it. That's probably why us as a 24/7 sports network are a little bit lower on him, because he wasn't always in this greatest shape. But I think we have him as like a low end 4-star, like a 90 grade. And then Rivals has him really, really, really high. This is why the composite is helpful, because he's at like a 94 rating, which is probably like about that's a high end 4-star.
Yeah,
I think probably should be.
I think both companies are wrong with their rankings. Just to be matter of fact and upfront about it, I think Rivals has him too high. I don't view him as the best offensive tackle in the country, which is basically where they have him ranked. I think he's a very talented offensive tackle, but I don't think he's quite that level. And that's not supposed to be a slide on him. And I think we have him too low as a company. I think we've not evolved with his ranking over time, with how his body has evolved and how he's shown. Big body kids are tough to judge, and it's one of those things where forecasting how they're going to develop is very difficult. But I think he's shown a lot of positive signs in the last 12, 18, 24 months that he's got a work ethic to do it and that he has plenty of ability. And I'm not going to bet against a kid out of Aquinas. There's just too much good history built up there with kids turning into good players and ending up on playing on Sunday. So I think the ranking in posit reflects, but that's how rankings work.
Okay, now for the two transfer prospects who are on campus this weekend. Chris, keep the mic on. Let's talk about Jared Verse, the Albany defensive end transfer. Super high priority for Florida State. As what's the intel and the vibes from that visit, if you will?
Well, it was funny. I had a conversation with somebody that said they were doing an advanced scout on Syracuse for FSU during the season, and they were watching Albany film, and they simply had a moment of, who the hell is this kid? And then they kept watching the film, and they're like, we need to know who this kid is. And then fast forward, he hits the portal. So FSU definitely loves Jared Verse, what he brings to the table. I will tell you, in the short time of dealing with him and speaking with people that dealt with him on a visit, his maturity really stands out. He's just a kid that's got it together. He knows what he's looking for. He's making a business-minded decision. His mother was along for the ride for the visit. She's also very business-minded. I think those two people making a decision are going to make a very intelligent, based on, pros versus cons kind of decision. It's not an emotional deal for him. As far as what FSU did with him, getting Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, who both were remaining on campus and did deal with him on the visit, to be involved with him was very important. I think it wholeheartedly made an impact. I think hearing what Pop and Jermaine were able to accomplish here as guys that were in his shoes 12 months ago as transfers definitely made an impact with him. John Papuchis did a very good job. He likes JP a great deal. That relationship's been established over the time he's been in the portal, which is only a couple weeks. Went to Syracuse before FSU, Houston immediately before FSU, Tennessee after FSU, and he extended the Tennessee visit to some degree. I don't know that he ever made it to Purdue. The original plan was for him to make it to Purdue on Sunday. I don't know if he actually stepped on campus in West Lafayette or not. I'm actually hoping to catch up with Jared again here either today or tomorrow. I think a decision for him will come sooner rather than later. I'm not sure it will be on Wednesday for sure, but he, as a transfer, has a little bit more time. But FSU is wholeheartedly in this. I think Tennessee, just based on what I knew going into this string of visits, I think was a major contender. They were always the one I was a little concerned if they were going to bump a visit. And to some degree, they bumped Iowa initially and then extended and maybe bumped Purdue too. That shows a little bit of the clout they have and what they're trying to do. But I wouldn't dismiss any school with him because I think there's a purpose and a reason why he stepped on every campus he stepped on.
More like Purdue. Sorry, I was trying to make that joke like 30 seconds ago. It's a good one.
And the last one.
Wait, didn't Auburn offer as well?
Yeah, Auburn offered. I don't know if that will matter, though, because I feel like he's trying to fit. He had made a very long list with his mother, narrowed it down, figured out visits, taken visits. It's all very organized. Somebody asked, is Verse a day one starter? I don't want to anoint him as the next Jermaine Johnson. I think he's wholeheartedly a guy that helps FSU a hell of a lot at defensive end, regardless of what else they add in this class. I don't know if that means starter. I definitely think it means too deep. Do I think he's capable of starting? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think you bring him in with the mindset of him starting, especially the maturity that Chris mentioned, and then just the physical maturity as well. He'd have to make the jump up from the SCS level, but seems well equipped to do that as well as anyone. The last official visitor was wide receiver Micah Pittman, the transfer from Oregon. I talked to him for a little bit. Chris jumped in as well because both he and Daniel Lyons were exiting at the same time. I mean, the big takeaway, I think, for Micah Pittman is, one, the relationship with Kenny Dillingham, the way he would be used at Florida State. They talked about putting him in the backfield, lining him up in the slot, outside. So there's room for playing time, which is something that, why he'd be attracted to a school like Florida State. Obviously, the relationship with Kenny Dillingham is something we'll monitor, like, as things unfold with Kenny coming up here in the next 24 hours or so. But he seemed to really enjoy himself. He's from the Tampa area originally. He said that location wouldn't play a huge role in his final decision. He's visited Arizona State. He's visited Florida State. He was at school at Oregon after being in California in high school. He's a fan of Disneyland. He liked the bricks at Florida State's campus. So that's some intel there. But really, I think the main takeaway from what he discussed was his timeline for committing. And it's interesting. You guys can hop in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the timeline is interesting because FSU's semester starts in early January.
January 5th.
January 5th, so first week of January. He right now is planning to take an official visit to Texas A&M that second week of January.
Yeah, because Texas A&M's semester doesn't begin until, I believe it's January 18th. And to set the table here for what Sinone's going to talk about, there's a dead period. We hit a dead period starting today, Monday, and that dead period goes till January 13th. Visits can happen again on college campuses or in person after January 13th. But there's an exception to this rule, and I'm going to read it exactly how the NCAA writes it. The 7 days immediately before the first day of classes of the institution's second academic term, that's the spring term, that are not part of the contact period, applicable only to prospective student athletes who intend to enroll mid-year, which Pittman is one of. FSU's semester, in the FSU case, begins January 5th, so that period for FSU is December 29th. For an example, like A&M, because it starts, we believe, on the 18th based on an internet search of when spring classes start at A&M, that would be January 11th. So they could potentially bring him in a couple days before the dead period ends, but there's a tight window there because FSU usually really can't fit a kid in after drop ad, which is usually, and Zach can correct me because it's a more recent student, and my old ass is usually about a week after the beginning of the semester. So in FSU's case, drop ad probably ends around the January 12th window. So that would be like a drop dead date for potentially getting a kid in. It would be very difficult after that to do it. A lot of hoops to jump through and bridges to build.
Dynamite drop in there, Zach. Wasn't that kick to Zach? Good.
For me?
He said he wanted to...
On drop ad, am I correct about it still being a week after the beginning of the semester? Is that still how it works?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of weird because the spring semester starts on a Wednesday, which is January 5th. So I'm not really sure whether that goes into the following week. I think it will. Probably the following week, Friday, is when drop ad ends.
So that would be the 14th.
I think so.
Can I say on Pittman, I think that's in a holding pattern with Dillingham coming or going.
Yeah.
One, because he led his recruitment, but two, the dynamics we talked about, Dillingham kind of picked Pittman to go all in on. Of course, Norvell, I'm sure, had say so in it, but that's one of those relationships where if Kenny wants to go after him, Kenny can go after him. If Kenny's gone, where's the relationship with Pittman? Norvell didn't go see him in Eugene, Oregon. And I'm not saying he needed to, but I'm just not so sure that he remains a priority when Dillingham's gone. Maybe he does. I'm just saying I think we just need to kind of hold off on Pittman until we see what Dillingham.
Pittman going back to Oregon would be an interesting scenario.
I'm not saying that.
I don't think that would happen either.
He has other options. Like you said, he might go visit Texas A&M, Arizona State. I think it's still young in his recruitment. And I think since the recruitment of Pittman, there's been so many wide receivers that have hit the portal that FSU's interested in. Whether or not Kenny Dillingham stays or goes, I still think that they kind of revisit the whole wide receiver transfer board during this dead period.
Zach actually, when he read the article that I wrote about Pittman, Zach mentioned this, and maybe Zach, if you want to elaborate on it, but it seems like his right now, assuming, let's say Kenny Dillingham stays, that's what we're all, we'll operate under this assumption for now. If he does, it basically, Pittman's commitment is going to come, if it comes in the next week or two, we believe it'll be Florida State. If it doesn't come before that January 5th deadline or so, like to enroll, then it seems like he's kicking the tires down to Texas A&M. Is that the assumption right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like. If he wants to take another visit, he's probably not coming to Florida State because, I mean, what we talked about with drop ad and getting him in to school for the spring semester at Florida State is going to be very difficult if he tries to go and take another visit in January. So, yeah, I mean,
there are ways to bring guys in after drop ad. I know that
definitely,
up to 2 weeks after drop ad, there's still waivers and ways to get guys in. So I'm not calling the end of drop ad the drop dead deadline, but it's kind of after that. There's some hoops and some waivers that need to be filed after drop ad.
Athletics operates on a different schedule than the rest of everyone else.
But don't you think if he makes that choice to be like, okay, I'm not going to go enroll in Florida State, I want to go take another visit, he's probably not coming to Florida State.
Agree, and then you
especially
probably
if Texas A&M really wants him.
I also think it drops the value of him to FSU
if he's not there for the spring semester or spring practice. Yeah, for sure. That seems to be really important.
FSU continues to recruit him.
And I don't think Micah Pittman's like a can't miss guy out there. I think there are plenty of wide receivers in the portal that could bring the same sort of production to FSU. At the time that they started recruiting him, I think he was the one that they felt was the best option. Since then, there's been a lot of others to go in the portal, and there will be more.
That's what's interesting about Pittman to me, Josh, is like FSU's allocated, and specifically Kenny Dillingham's put in a ton of time, visited him multiple times. They get him here on an official visit, which there's a finite amount of official visits you can use. And I can see the path to him helping out this offense with his skill set, and he's a really good punt returner as well. Like there's reasons why. Yes, there's reasons why he's valuable. You need speed, you need playmakers. I get it. But he doesn't seem like someone that's like a surefire, like would automatically change the complexion of your offense. That's not a guarantee. He hasn't been super productive at Oregon. So
they weren't taking him to be the only wide receiver transfer. I mean, he was probably going to be one of two. So yeah, I agree with that.
I feel like he'd be like how they used Ja'Kai Douglas late in the season. I think that's
somebody more dependable, somebody a little bit more
experienced. Yeah. And again, the punt returning aspect would be to me the most important part of what he would bring.
Miami just offered Jared Verse. Just add that.
All right, gonna have to fight for that one, Florida State. So let's go into what we're expecting here, what we know, what we don't know, what we're waiting to see, position by position in the coming days. As early signing period is about to be underway on Wednesday morning, it'll start. It'll go through Friday. Before we do that, thanks to everyone who's watching. We have almost 500 viewers at this moment. Thanks to everyone who listens to On the Bench via the podcast, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify. Thank you everyone for just checking us out, listening to us, making a part of your rotation. I know there's a lot of options out there, so thank you very much. So let's get into the different positions here as we get to the early signing period preview. Starting off at quarterback. Now, guys, some of these we could just go through like 30 seconds. We don't have to spend a ton of time on. Other positions we'll need to spend a little bit more time on, but I want to try to keep this down to like 15 minutes so we can get out of here. I know you all have calls to make and whatnot with recruiting going on. So quarterback. AJ Duffy is the lone commit in this class. Anything else to add to that right now? Potential transfers, other prospects, anything else right now, fellas?
No. Any developments with that will come after the signing period.
I've said all along on Max Johnson, I did not expect FSU to have any sense of urgency on pursuing him. Rumors ran rampant all week that FSU was in contact with Max and the family was coming in for a visit this weekend. None of that was true. Max Johnson and his family did not come in for a visit. I don't believe there's an active recruitment going on there right now. I said I didn't expect anything before early signing period. That still doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I'll dig into it during the dead period, but just to recap everybody on Max Johnson, there's nothing going on there.
Bo Nix just entered the transfer portal yesterday evening. Obviously, there's a connection with him and Kenny Dillingham. Again, we'll see what happens with Kenny Dillingham. That would make sense as someone who could be brought in and maybe not scare away Jordan Travis.
If Dillingham were to stay, that would be a name that I highly dig in on and do some research and try to get some information. But with what's going on with Dillingham right now, I'm just kind of in a holding pattern over till this is over.
Okay, moving on to running back right now. We have the commit, Rodney Hill. The target primarily is Javante Barnes. I'm not sure if there's anyone else there. Zach, anything to add at running backs? I know you've kept in touch with Rodney Hill and also plugged in with the Javante Barnes recruitment as well.
Yeah, I mean, Rodney Hill is locked in. No worry about that. Signing Wednesday. And then for Javante Barnes, we've talked about it's pretty much tied to Dillingham, Kenny Dillingham. If he leaves to Oregon, it's going to be really hard recruitment for FSU to win out in. I think regardless, even if Dillingham stays, it's going to be a hard recruitment because you've got USC pushing, who got him in on OV over the weekend. And then Oklahoma retained his main relationship there in DeMarco Murray. So, yeah, those two schools are going to be hard to beat. But FSU with Dillingham and on the staff is very much involved.
Rob Alvarez in the chat asked about Laborn's, Kalen Laborn. Hey, kudos to him. He graduated from Florida State. Didn't he just commit to Marshall?
Yeah.
I believe I saw that yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember people trying to tell us before the season that he was coming to play. No. Just be cognizant of where you get your news from, people. Wide receiver. Let's go there because this is going to be a very interesting position, not just with the transfer portal as we discussed earlier with Michael Pittman, but just kind of trying to hold on to one commit, trying to maybe get another high priority 2022 guy. The commit is Devon Mortimer, who had an awesome senior season. His senior highlights are really fun down there at Dillard High School in South Florida, easy for me to say. The primary target in the 2022 class is Kevin Coleman, blue chip, high-end 4-star, low-end 5-star, depending what service you use in the St. Louis area. Let's start off with Devon Mortimer. He's visited both Western Michigan and Louisville in the past 2 weeks.
West Virginia, buddy.
When I say Western Michigan, sorry, I'm all over the place. I was trying to get where Kevin Coleman is from too. Yeah, West Virginia and Louisville. Zach, what the hell's going on with Devon Mortimer right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy situation. I spoke with Mortimer last night, and it was just a very confusing interview. I basically asked him, the questions just about why he took the visit. He said he's exploring his options. I asked him, are you still locked in? He said, yes, very much locked in. He planned to sign with FSU on Wednesday. And then I asked him a question towards the end of the interview where I was like, is there any chance that any of these other schools could change your mind by Wednesday? And he's like, I don't really know. I'm going to have to pray on it. And hopefully one day or one of these days I'll wake up with the school I'm going to go to or something. So I don't know. It was just a very confusing interview. Obviously, he's not completely locked in if he's saying things like that. I was told this morning that he spoke with FSU either last night or this morning and relayed to them that he's locked in. So it's going to be a developing situation over these next couple days. Obviously, it's a South Florida recruit. These things usually get crazy, and a lot of times, even on signing day, you'll see drama. So I don't expect this one to be over, but as of right now, if I had to predict where he's going to sign, I'd say FSU, just because of the long-standing relationship with multiple members of that staff. But it doesn't mean that West Virginia and Louisville are going to quit recruiting him up until he signs, which I believe is going to be at I'm trying to look at my schedule right now. Dillard, 2 p.m. on Wednesday is when Nigel Kelly and Devon Mortimer. So that's a late signing.
That's a really long day.
Yeah. But there's going to be some more later signings. So it's going to be quite a long day for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, check it all out in Knowles 24/7.
It is worth noting on the schedule that when schools have ceremonies, sometimes kids will sign early in the morning, send it in.
Yeah.
And then the school they send it into, sometimes will immediately put out that they have signed, and sometimes we'll hold it till said ceremony at young man's school. So those things can kind of get in flux at times.
Zach said he thinks right now, based on what he's knowing or what he knows, and again, a lot. It's Monday at 11 o'clock right now. We're talking about 2 p.m. ceremony on Wednesday. A lot can change for a South Florida recruit that's being coveted by a couple different schools. Do we think around the horn real quick? Buy or Sonone? Devon Mortimer signs with Florida State. Zach, you're a buy?
I'm a buy.
Buy, baby, buy. Chris?
I'm a buy.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm a buy for right now.
I'll go with buy as well and complete the sweep there. If they don't sign him, that seems like a pretty big cause for concern with wide receiver recruiting and what you're not getting done, right?
I don't think Devon Mortimer should be your measuring stick on whether wide receiver recruiting is struggling or not. I think regardless, looking at how this cycle progressed, FSU has not done a good job of building that board. Even at positions along the defensive line, FSU is legitimately involved with multiple elite prospects. And there's other positions, defensive back. That's the perfect example. They're about to sign probably 3 kids in the top 100, whereas a receiver, you might not sign one prospect. And that's arguably your biggest need on the entire roster. We've talked about it all season, all off season, that receiver is a huge need, but for some reason they just couldn't develop a strong board. We were talking about this dating back to even the summer, that it seemed like it was like Kevin Coleman, Devon Mortimer, and no one else. And then Camden Brown was an option, but then he wasn't really a legitimate option towards the end of his recruitment with FSU.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been a confusing cycle with that position, and I think, in my opinion, change needs to be made. But whether that falls on the position coach, the totality of the recruitment of that position, I don't know. But I think something needs to change in order to better the recruiting of that position in the future.
I have to imagine it's I haven't heard this from anyone inside the program, but that it would be pretty appalling for Mike Norvell, who was a former wide receiver and developed wide receivers at a high level at Memphis, to kind of see what's materializing at that position group. Again, if you go ahead and get Devon Mortimer and Kevin Coleman, that changes the outlook at the position almost instantly. But it's not a slam dunk by any means. Where do things stand with Kevin Coleman? Was he at Miami this weekend? Is that where he ended up going?
Yeah. There hasn't been an on-record thing with Kevin Coleman that I've seen from our Miami site, but they put out a VIP notes article about, where things stand with each of the recruits. They said everything went positive. That's normally how things go on an official. I'm not sure to the extent of which, how much of a move Miami made with him. But I mean, I think this thing is kind of a wait and see for Florida State with Kenny Dillingham, right? If he goes to Oregon, that dramatically changes his recruitment, because I genuinely think that if Dillingham were to stay on staff, FSU would have a more than 50% chance to sign Kevin Coleman on Wednesday. But I also know that an interesting note is someone told me over the weekend that Kevin Coleman could possibly delay his recruitment or his signing with the school, and he might just enroll at a school. So he might announce his commitment at the Army. Is he committing at the All-American?
All-American Bowl.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure someone put out that possibility, and I think that's what may happen, especially if Dillingham were to leave. I think that would maybe cause him to question things a little bit. He might go and extend it and maybe just enroll at a school in January, because I know he's an early enrollee. So I know that's a possibility. It's I mean, you have to view this as an FSU Miami battle, right? Because he chose to visit Miami over the weekend. USC, when he visited USC, they had a different head coach. The interim was Dante Williams over there. So he doesn't really have a pre-existing relationship with Lincoln Riley. I think it's an FSU Miami battle, and I think this comes down to whether, if Dillingham were to leave to Oregon, Florida State has enough, relationships built with him and his family to win Coleman over.
Oregon, I guess, would be one that would make sense, at least a little bit, if Kenny did leave there. He's been to Oregon.
Decides to pursue. I don't know if he would pursue Kevin Coleman, but yeah,
it'd be worth noting. Kesna mentions that wide receiver recruiting Destin Hill. I mean, if he makes it to Florida State in January, as we're expecting right now, then that obviously would help the room. But you went this year without him, and he would have helped. So, I don't know. Tight end, let's see. There's commits from Brian Courtney, Jarrell Powers. Courtney's an athlete. Jarrell Powers is kind of a project player. Had a nice senior season. Certainly grew watching his senior highlights compared to his junior highlights. There's progress there. Josh, should FSU take how many more tight ends? 2, 3? Just more. There's no one there to note right now. I mean, obviously Jake Johnson, if Max Johnson stuff heats up after early signing period, but it's not something we'll get into right now. Offensive line commits. Jalen Early, loved his senior highlights. Antavius Woody, we'll get into the development there in a second. Quayshawn Sapp, Daughtry Richardson, and Kanaya Charlton. Who wants to talk about Antavius Woody? Chris, do you want to update what's happening with Woody right now? Or
I got it.
Josh,
I don't expect. The report yesterday of Antavius Woody not going to sign his LOI until February, mainly because he does not have an LOI to sign. Teams are a little bit concerned about his academics. there's more time. As of now, I'm told by multiple sources he's not eligible. Didn't really make sense if you read the article. He says that he visited Auburn and Florida State, and he wants to take more time to think about those schools before he decides. I'm willing to bet neither of those schools are sending him an LOI on Wednesday. I think if either of those schools were sending him an LOI, I think he would sign one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's more of the issue that's going on with Antavius Wood, which is not a surprise. I mean, when he committed in June, we knew that he had some grade concerns, had some work to do. I don't think that it's out of the possibility that he can get this done. I'm told that there's optimism that he can, but I don't expect an LOI to be sent to him by FSU on Wednesday.
Okay.
One other thing I'll add to the Woody dynamic. He keeps bringing up his interest in playing D-tackle, which is something Auburn's offering. FSU likes him as an interior lineman.
If Auburn was offering that, Chris, they would send him an LOI on Wednesday.
That's a fair point too. But he does keep bringing it up. It's just interesting to me. I'm always a guy where if a guy's heart isn't into it, you're going to be fighting a battle from the word go. It's like a D end who's probably going to grow into a D tackle who thinks he's a D end. That's a battle you got to fight. Sometimes those things don't always pan out great. You know, you can't make a guy do
linebacker trying to be a safety. Yeah.
Oh, Zach.
Zach. Zach coming off the top rope.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
All right. The targets. Let's see. Julian Armella, we've discussed already. I'll have crystal balls in there. So feeling good about that. Bud's had his in, as he likes to note, for about 2 years now. Steve Wiltfong put one in yesterday. So FSU trending adamantly so for Julian Armella. The good win prospect from was it Kentucky or Indiana? Indiana.
He's in Charlestown, Indiana,
which is almost Kentucky. But yeah, so anyways, he's on the board, but doesn't sound like that's someone that FSU has a ton of traction for right now. You took your shot at the 5-star offensive tackle prospect. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Transfers, Miles Frazier and Caden Lyles are two names to note. FSU really likes Caden Lyles. Frazier hasn't gotten on the campus yet. He was just at LSU this weekend. Josh, anything to update on the transfers or anything you want to add to offensive line before we move on?
Yeah, I don't think FSU's in it for Miles Frazier at this point. If he does decide to extend his recruitment into January, maybe we see something happen. But right now, I would not consider him a target, which is why I didn't put him. Well, no, we're talking transfers. I don't really consider Miles a legitimate target at this point. I do think that FSU is going to land Caden Lyles. I know that they've done a great job recruiting him. We reported last week that FSU did an in-home visit with him. I don't know when he's going to decide. I think it's going to be something quiet where he just releases it on Twitter or something. Hopefully I get off to that before it happens. But right now I expect Caden Lyles to come to Florida State.
That would be huge. Let's go to defensive end, edge recruiting. The only commit right now is Aaron Hester. The targets, I mean, there's some big names here, and you got to kind of hold your breath here for the next 48 hours or so. Marvin Jones Jr., Nigel Kelly, Travion Williams to an extent, and then we've talked about Jared Verse. Let's start off. Who wants to take Marvin Jones Jr., the legacy defensive end recruit from South Florida?
I will.
Our lovely co-host Josh Newberg has the only crystal ball of the bunch here and the entire network in on him, and it's for Alabama. And I believe he reiterated this morning that he still feels that way, despite the fact that FSU, obviously others such as Georgia, for example, are battling their backsides off to try to get Marvin Jones Jr. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday inside the Moore, not inside the Moore, but who works inside the Moore, about Marvin Jones. And I flatly said, like, I don't have a good read on that. Like, I'm just not comfortable. Dad obviously wants him at FSU. Mom, I feel like, is sort of enjoying the recruiting game to a degree, and it's tough to get a good read there. And then Marvin keeps it very much to himself and seems to enjoy everything he does and says the right things about each place he visits. Midweek to USC last week, weekend to Georgia this past weekend. So if you read into last visits, there's those. I don't really read into that with him. FSU's going to be there. They're going to be in consideration. I think for Marvin Jones, it's sort of a, do I go to the great contender school that's phenomenal, that keeps producing guys at my level at an extremely high level? That would be Alabama. Or do I go to the school where obviously I have the familial ties? They've done a good job in immediate recent history this past season with that position. That would be FSU. I think FSU's in this. I don't think Marvin's made a decision. I think that decision from him may not truly come till Wednesday. I would presume he's probably sitting down in the next 48 hours with his mother and some others and truly making that decision. But yeah, I'll hand the baton off there, but that's where I kind of stand on Marvin Jones Jr.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think right now I would not predict him to FSU. I've been like on record saying that I'm not super confident that he lands in FSU's class. That's not to say that, FSU is just giving up or they're not involved heavily within his recruitment. Mike Norvell, we've been told, was on the phone with him last night at 8 p.m. Given not a last pitch, but one of his last pitches to Jones and his family before he signs on Wednesday. That's going to be an interesting situation because I was told that American Heritage's ceremony on Wednesday starts at 4 p.m. So you want to talk about extending signing day and having drama going on all day. I think it's going to be a pretty crazy day, and to cap it off with Marvin Jones Jr. at 4 p.m. Probably later than that, because I'm pretty sure Heritage likes to do the thing where they have all of their athletes, because they have a bunch of successful sport programs at their schools. So have the swimmers and all them signing, and then finally it'll be like the football guys that are signing. And I think obviously we got Earl Little there. We'll talk about him later, but right now I'm not going to put in a crystal ball because I don't really think that Marvin's come to a decision yet. Like Chris is saying, I think it's going to be a thing where he mulls over multiple schools over the next 24, 48 hours and comes to that final decision. But Josh's prediction, I would agree with that. I think that's a good prediction of where he will end up. I don't know that right now in his mind he's for sure Alabama, but I think you can't bet against Nick Saban.
It's weird. It's like, to me, with Marvin Jones Jr., when you're looking like at his finalists in the schools, he's looking at, it's like one of these schools is not like the other right now. Not maybe long term in the history of college football, but where the programs currently stand. That's Florida State is kind of the outlier. We know, like Chris mentioned earlier, the familial ties are part of that. And typically, like when one's not like the other, I usually think that means something. But in this case, I really don't know what it means. So let's go to Nigel E. Kelly. Zach, I'll throw that to you as well. Someone that seems like a Florida State Miami deal right now at this point.
Yeah, definitely Florida State Miami battle. He was at Miami over the weekend. Definitely think Miami has the momentum. It's been a crazy recruitment because last week, like, if Mario Cristobal was not hired as Miami's head coach, like, I'm almost certain that Nigel E. Kelly would have ended up in FSU's class. Because I genuinely do not think that they were, like, him and his mom were going to decide to send him out to Oregon. That just wasn't going to happen based on what I've been told. I was told that he told FSU that he was coming last week. Like, it got to the point where I think, like, FSU was definitely the leader. And then Miami obviously hired Mario Cristobal, who he's known forever. He's taken multiple visits out to Oregon. He even said in an interview with Andrew Ivins that if Oregon was located where Miami was, he'd already be committed there. So that just shows you the level of comfort he has with Mario Cristobal. Now that he's only 30 miles away from where he lives, like, it'd be hard to bet against them, especially them getting the last OV. Obviously FSU's still in it. I just think that Miami had the perfect situation happen for them to be able to land Nigel E. Kelly, because just what I mentioned with the him and his mother's comfortability with Cristobal and that staff.
The only other, unless you guys have anything to add on those two South Florida defensive ends, the only other defensive end to talk about, I think right now, is Trevion Williams, the former FSU commit. I believe he's going to one of the Mississippi schools. I don't know what the latest on there is, though. Chris, do you have anything?
Mississippi State's the school to watch there. I think that's where he ends up. That's where my crystal ball is on. They've been the school that I believed it would be since he decommitted from Florida State. To some degree, Mississippi State is what he's known, always known, so it's very comfortable to him. FSU has not waved the white flag on this one. They've pursued him constantly. They were on the phone with him and his family, who they have an excellent relationship with, yesterday throughout the day. I know Trevion's still receptive to it. Ole Miss was trying to yank him in this past weekend after the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, which ended on Saturday afternoon. To my knowledge, he did not make it to Ole Miss. So if he is making a decision on signing day, it will be between FSU and Mississippi State, I suspect. But I don't think it will end up being FSU. I fully expect him to end up at Mississippi State. That's what I've expected since he decommitted from FSU. But they have not given up on it. The pursuit remains consistent.
What just happened there, Josh? I was looking away and I looked up and the computer moved. Nothing. I can see Allison's shadow every now and then, by the way. Like, very busy over there. Let's see. Defensive tackle commitments. Daniel Lyons, you already mentioned him. Chris spoke with him after his visit. All Knoll, Bishop Thomas. Somebody he didn't play football this past year, but some of the staff is still pretty high on. Targets right now, Tyree West from Tift County. Big time prospect. Is he still committed to Georgia technically?
Yeah, but they're not a factor in this.
Yeah, so it's Florida State. Josh, where are you at right now after this past weekend with your confidence scale? Was it a 10? Now where are we?
Did he go to Tennessee this weekend? Okay,
So.
then if my math serves me correct, 1 minus 8 is 7. So I am currently at a 7.
Okay. And Chris, where are you at with your confidence rating, Tyree West?
I believe I'm at an 8.
Whoa, you're more confident than Josh is right now. And for the people like at home, like a Chris 8 is like a Josh 10, I think, right? Like that Chris doesn't get much more confident than an 8. So I feel like you're saying he's a lock is how I'm interpreting this.
I'm not saying he's a lock. I don't believe in locks. They don't exist.
If you put a 10 in, Josh is found out.
Then it can get weird. But no, Tyree West is a guy that when this all became a possibility of him departing Georgia's class in the next place, it was FSU, and it's been FSU consistently. It is a credit to Tennessee that they actually got him to show up. You know, that matters. But at the end of the day, I still expect it to be FSU. I'll be surprised if it's not. I think the relationship with Kenyatta Watson is huge here. I think that's one that's very crucial. I think the FSU coaching staff, guys like Adam Fuller, guys like Odell Higgins, John Papuchas, I think they've all done a good job as well as of establishing a strong relationship with him that he has trust in. It's also the closest place to home, which I think is appealing to him as well.
Anything else on defensive tackle? Nope. All right, linebacker, currently committed, Omar Graham Jr. His senior highlights are awesome. Check him out. Like, really had a really nice year. Took his game to another level. So I like him being like your second linebacker in the class. But is there a first linebacker in this class? Who are the targets, guys? Anyone? Am I just throwing up my arms here, shrugging? All right, we moving on. By the way, Randy Shannon was announced as the linebacker coach officially. Reported that first here on Knowles 24/7. And he's the co-DC as well. Not a whole lot more to add. We've already talked about that addition. Let's see. Maybe Randy can work his magic and get Wesley Bassint at the very end. But was Wesley at Miami this weekend?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
For
Cornerback,
the 13th time this year.
Cornerback and safety. All right, this is where it gets nice and bright and rosy on what's on the docket currently. That's Travis Hunter and Sam McCall committed. The targets, Juco prospects, Marquise Gilbert and DeCarlos Nicholson. It doesn't seem like either of those are going to happen right now. They may not have to, though, because Azariah Thomas is likely coming to Florida State. So that gives you, think about that, fellas. If that comes to fruition, you got Travis Hunter, Sam McCall, Thomas. Like, that's 3 top 100 recruits in the secondary. That immediately changes the complexion, the outlook of your secondary for the future. How big would that be? Huge. Right?
To just change everything you just said.
No,
and Zach's tagging me in. FSU has optimism with DeCarlos Nicholson.
Do they really?
Yeah.
With the
He went to
context of
Mississippi
Thomas,
State.
possibly too.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Okay.
He went to Mississippi State this weekend. Mississippi State definitely has confidence. The crystal ball has gone in that direction following the weekend visit. If I was entering one on him, I think I would enter it for Mississippi State. But I, plain and simple, had somebody yesterday tell me that they think DeCarlos Nicholson very likely might end up at FSU. That works at FSU.
It's interesting as we get into the numbers games, I guess. And I know we love playing numbers games. They always work out here. But that would then be, if you get him and you get Thomas, then that's 4 defensive backs in this class.
Think of how thinned out FSU's secondary has been each of the last 2 seasons, especially at the safety position at the end of the year. And we also believe that there are guys in that group currently on campus who may not still be part of that group long term. That's an area where there may be some shaking of the tree and some leaves fall out.
Yeah, Travis Jay would be someone. I don't know if his future's in the secondary at Florida State. It's either probably unless things change with exit interviews coming up this week, which are expected, I think, in the middle of the week here. But whether it's moving to the other side of the ball or moving on elsewhere, not a whole lot of confidence that he's someone who's going to continue to develop in the secondary at Florida State right now. Jarvis Brownlee, man, I love the way he plays and attacks on the field, but like, we saw the Instagram comment the other day, right? Like, you just, got to be a little bit more buttoned up. Got to be a little bit more buttoned up, and I get the chip on your shoulder deal. I don't want Jarvis to come after me for not mentioning him in something. But yeah, he just needs to be a little bit more buttoned up and a little bit tighter, especially given some of the downs he had this season, in addition to the ups. So yeah,
Jamie
I guess
Robinson's future is
Jamie
another one
Robinson-
that's still up in the air. Does he go pro? Does he stay? Not yet known.
you did see him on campus this week, though, Chris?
Yeah, but I believe he was leaving town. But
Okay,
I mean,
but
finals week has come and gone, so he's more than able to leave campus. Obviously,
yeah, it's good though that he's still around. It's better than not seeing
yeah.
him.
I think I saw him on Friday, if I recall correctly.
Okay, so yeah, there's still some movement and developments, I guess, that could happen in the secondary, and also, like, we've talked about this a ton on the podcast before. Travis Hunter, and also McCall and Thomas all like play some offense for their high school teams as well. Obviously, Travis Hunter, I think, projects like potentially as a wide receiver at the next level as well. I know he wants to play cornerback, but man, like, I think FSU staff would love to have him take some snaps on offense. Whether he's open to that and by how much, like, we'll see. I think that is a possibility. So yeah, I could see adding another number, I guess, as I'm thinking this all out and workshopping in my mind right now. Taking another guy wouldn't be a bad thing. Other guys who are on the docket and are targets right now: Earl Little Jr., Kendrick Law, and Kamari Wilson. Wilson's more of a safety. Law and Little are more cornerbacks, correct?
Yeah, Law is Alabama, LSU, FSU. He also visited Texas, but I think it's mainly those three. I think that one's truly going to come down to Alabama or LSU, despite FSU making a good effort. Earl Little has been penciled into Alabama for a long time, but they are recruiting like 37 defensive backs for only so many spots, so it would be interesting, but everybody expects Earl Little in Alabama's class unless something drastically changes in the last 72 hours. If it was to change, FSU's done a great job of positioning themselves, I think, as number 2 in his recruitment. So that's Law and Little. And who was the third one that you mentioned?
Law, Little, and Kamari Wilson.
Kamari Wilson, most people expect to go to Georgia. He did visit Florida this past weekend, but, it would be surprising if it changes up from Georgia. Similar to Little and how long he's been penciled into Alabama, Wilson's been penciled into Georgia for that length of time too.
Anything else? I got like one or two more topics to talk about. We'll get out of here. We have like 450 people that have stuck around watching this. This is impressive.
I think we did a good job previewing the class. I will mention that you can go on the target list, the top targets for FSU. If they're early signing, early enrollee, those things should be on their profile now. I went through that again this morning along with Zach, Josh, and Brendan and made sure that we had that updated to the best of our knowledge to where it stands today. We do the best job in the network of doing that, and we definitely do it with the guys that we care about from an FSU perspective. So I would mention that. We covered the dead period, all that entails. We talked about the early signing periods Wednesday to Friday. I think people have a great working knowledge of what's to come this week.
Yeah, and if anything changes, obviously we'll have it on Knowles 24/7. I don't know if we'll do a podcast before Wednesday or even on Wednesday evening unless like some crazy things happen, and that could happen. And there's also Josh might jump on the spaces. I'll shout that out for you. I don't know if you can, Josh, on the bench, but
yeah. No, the
Spaces
suits are holding me down. But I will be on Spaces today at noon. I will be on Spaces tomorrow at some point. But as always, if you guys have any questions for us, you can ask it on the Knowles 24/7 message board. We're on there all day. Anything you guys want to know, we're here to answer it.
Yeah, and if you guys want to know about Bourbon, Bourbon on a Budget will be live tonight on Monday evening. There's Bourbon Big Board behind me. It's kind of showing up a little following, guys. We get like 200 to 400 listeners per episode now. So,
I'm going to clean my pool this afternoon, and if you want to, get in my house's security camera and watch me do it, you can also do that.
That sounds like an OnlyFans type of deal.
It's all about the platforms. We're all on a platform.
Oh, we should talk before we wrap up here. Michael Alford has been named the athletic director at Florida State after I'm trying to think of the adjective to describe. I described it as embarrassing last week, the AD search. Was that too harsh in hindsight, Chris?
I wouldn't say it was embarrassing. I would say it was
And then we
Well,
have
there was a
here.
very public pursuit of Vince Tyre from Louisville, who is no longer at Louisville as their AD after FSU helped him get out of his contract, and therefore he decided to submit his resignation. Where it was expected that if he did in fact get over the hurdle of the contract issue with Louisville, that he would end up at FSU. He gets over that hurdle. Pause gets hit for whatever reason. FSU moves on and hires the guy who was already in the building, who was the head of Seminole Boosters Incorporated, the president and the CEO, Michael Alford, who's been at FSU for almost a year and a half. I believe it's a year and a half. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'll wait for the text. And done a phenomenal job. Michael Alford is a guy who's very well appreciated around Florida State for what he has already done within the role that he had with SBI. SBI joining up with FSU AA and it becoming one entity was a very good thing for FSU, and he kind of spearheaded that in its early creation. And I think he did a phenomenal job of setting the table for what is next for the person that will replace him. In regards to replacing him with SBI, they're saying it will be a national search. I think there are some internal candidates led by Stephen Ponder who have a great chance of potentially replacing Michael Alford's role. They could also go outside and try to hire somebody else, as they did when they hired Michael Alford away from Central Michigan. As far as Alford being AD, when he spoke on Friday to the collected media and others in the room and the Moore Athletic Center, he was extremely appreciative of the opportunity. I think he feels like he's earned the trust of those within the building of being able to do that job and having a vision for how that job needs to be done at FSU. He believes a great deal in FSU needs to be an elite academic place for athletes. It needs to be an elite place for athletes to excel as athletes. He talked about putting a ring on one finger for a national championship and a diploma in the other and setting people up for the next part of their lives here. And I think he adamantly believes in that. As someone who's had many conversations with him, he's a guy that he's very good at conveying his message, but he also lives up to the message he conveys. And I think it's an excellent hire for FSU. I won't lie, I sort of stumped in my own regard saying that I thought he should have been the AD. I kind of felt that from the onset. I felt a national search and hiring a search firm to some degree was a waste of money, time, and effort, because I think the best candidate, or at least a candidate who would do a phenomenal job at FSU, was right down the hall. And in the end, it worked out, and that's who they got. And I think Michael Alford will be very, very good for Florida State. And I think coaches like Mike Norvell, Leonard Hamilton, both of whom were present at that, as well as other coaches, Lonnie Alameda, Mark Krikorian, several others at FSU. I believe I saw Bob Brayman, track and field coach, there as well, and some others. I think they like Michael Alford. I think they have a good working relationship with the man. I think they believe that that man is going to help their programs and every program at FSU and athletics excel to its greatest possible place. And he understands that it's about generating revenue, spending wisely, and putting you in position to be successful.
The two takeaways I had from that press conference, and then just talking to some people too, Chris, is one, the support that he had. You mentioned from the athletic side, from different coaches, but Mike Alford also, like the boosters and people that he's dealt with and worked with in the past year he's been here, like really rallied, especially when the Louisville AD didn't work out. So that was telling to me that he had as much support as he did so adamantly. He's done a really good job as a Seminole Boosters president or CEO, excuse me. So when someone excels in one job, I think that they're worth taking a look at in the other. It's not a guarantee that he's going to be successful. He does have AD experience at Central Michigan. I thought the best of both worlds would have been to have him work as Seminole Boosters CEO and have a sitting AD and get both of those together. I just don't think that was going to happen, especially with the Tyre hiring. Didn't seem like it was going to happen. One other note too is like the athletic director now, would it be Michael Alford? He fully supports Mike Norvell. That's something that I think he's talked a little bit about on the record, but just again, talking to people, like he thinks Mike has done a really good job. He knows the fight that Mike has had with overhauling the roster, the youth. He understands it really well. So like long-term, I think it's the best case scenario for Mike Norvell, for Michael Alford to be the athletic director. I think that's important that the athletic director is going to have full support of the head coach. So yeah, that's what I got for that. We good? Yeah. All right, guys. So thanks everyone for watching us here on the bench or listening to us on the bench. For Josh Newberg, Zach Blossian, and Christy, I'm Brendan Sinone. We'll talk to you guys, I guess, later this week after early signing period, kind of go over what happened. All right. Bye, everyone.